Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm really pleased to be joining the virtual summit today. My name's Ruby and I'm speaking from a victim survivor perspective and also as a campaigner in the area of online abuse, in particular intimate image abuse. I've been asked to speak to you today about my personal experience and also the lasting impacts that I've experienced as a result of my situation and how others, particularly the police, the government, etc., have responded to the experience that I went through. So we'll start with a kind of summary of my story. It was summer 2021. Summer 2020, right in the middle of COVID lockdown. I was on a lockdown walk with my dad and my brother, and I received the message that no one wants to receive from an acquaintance, someone I knew who had attended my school. I didn't know them very well, but they just dropped me a message and said, "Hi Ruby, really sorry to be the one to tell you this, but there's this horrible website showing explicit, nude, intimate images of women and girls from our area, and I'm on it, and unfortunately underneath my pictures are your pictures." And it's in that moment that your heart kind of drops. You have that kind of instant reaction of panic. You start thinking, what possible images could this be? Who would want to do such a thing? Why would anyone want to do this to me? And you just have a million thoughts kind of racing through your head. But one of the most prevalent thoughts is how many people have seen these images. And the area that I'm from, the community that I'm from, is quite close-knit in the UK, and news travels fast. So in the middle of the countryside with little signal, I couldn't access the website to see exactly what I was dealing with straight away. But I did as soon as I got home, and I decided to contact the police. It was a weird time in society anyway, because lots of places were running reduced services. You were being told to kind of stay at home and only go out in emergencies or where it's really necessary. This felt very necessary, so I actually couldn't get through on the phones to the police, so I went to my local police station. The immediate response was interesting, and like I say, the local area has a very informal, relaxed community, and someone I went with to the police station actually knew the desk officer, and they kind of gave us this information that the report I was making about my images being hosted online without consent was actually one of about 34 reports they'd had in 24 hours. So that just emphasizes really the snowball effect and the rapid pace at which this kind of abuse can spread and be known about. It turned out a lot of people I knew of or knew directly, my friend's sister, people I'd attended school with, people I'd worked with in the past. It turned out a lot of people were on this particular website, and it was a forum essentially set up to exploit mainly women and girls, categorized by local area. And after a little bit more personal investigation, it was set up in threads dedicated to every country in the world, every area, every postcode, and where there's bigger communities like cities, even specific areas that were dedicated to university students from a particular university campus, for example. So when you kind of feel like things are out of your control, the police are saying things like, well, do you know who's done this? If you don't know, it's going to be very difficult to prosecute. They're probably trying to be realistic. They're probably keeping in mind that they have other priorities that they can probably prove a little bit easier. But when people are saying these things to you, you feel very alone. So one of the first things I did was set up a WhatsApp support group for all of the victims I knew of at this particular time. just inviting them and their membership to the WhatsApp group as a means of communication, so that we could share any updates from the police with each other, but also as kind of strength in numbers, so that people didn't feel like it was just them going through it. It turned out the police response was very inconsistent, and at the time in 2020, this transpired to be really a result of some of the loopholes in the laws that we had in place in the UK. As a result, in our WhatsApp group of, at its peak, 24 members, none of us have successfully pursued our cases. Some of them were passed on to regional cybercrime, some of them were kind of dismissed, some of them were deemed not even a crime, so they weren't given crime reference numbers. So the response was very inconsistent, and we weren't happy with that. So we did raise a complaint with our regional police force. Around this time, I was alerted to the presence of My Image, My Choice, so a little shout out there. Some friends told me they'd heard of this group that were trying to change the discussion around things like intimate image abuse, deepfakes, technology abuse, online abuse, and they were looking for people to help contribute to that story. It also happened, fortunately, at the time, that the Law Commission in the UK were doing a review of the existing, what was known as revenge porn laws, that came into fruition in 2015. So it was very good timing to try and make a change and have an impact. So as a group, a local group, we contributed as much as we could to that, and we gave our testimonials. We joined, meetings, discussions, panels, and really tried to be heard. The difficult thing with this kind of crime, intimate image abuse, is that it is your face and your identity that's stolen. So a lot of victims, survivors feel uncomfortable going out in front of the camera again. And obviously it has huge implications on different parts of your life. Like personally for me, the impact I experienced was that I'm a teacher, and it was that thought that maybe my students have seen these images. I would go to the local shop or the post office and think, how many people in this queue have seen those images and recognize me? But some people have much more lasting psychological trauma from this kind of event. People can lose their jobs, their relationships, the support from their family. And luckily, I didn't have any of those severe lasting impacts. And that gave me encouragement to speak out on behalf of all victims who feel like they can't. This ties in with victim blaming, because there are lots of comments from members of the group illustrating how the police, or rather society, will say things or imply things like, if you didn't want the photos out there, you shouldn't have taken them, or you shouldn't have sent them. And there's a lot of focus on the victims being at fault for their actions, as opposed to the potential perpetrators. And that's a conversation that needs to change. And fortunately, in the UK, we have started to enact some of that change. So I'm happy to say that there's been a few amendments to UK law, most recently in January 24 this year. For example, deepfakes are now included in the Online Harms Bill. The threat to share images comes into some of the domestic abuse legislation. So all of these things were missing before, which really allowed individuals a bit of freedom to commit these crimes without real fear of being caught. This is a massive step forward, and we hope that other countries, other states, etc., might look to the work that's been done in the UK to ensure that the law supports police officers in supporting victims. However, it's not just about individual culpability. In my case, it was an anonymous image board. I will never know who uploaded the pictures. Therefore, I will never know who to blame and who to take to court or to try and prosecute. And this leads me on to the importance of tech accountability. we had a lot of barriers trying to remove images, trying to report images from various websites. Some were better than others. There's a fantastic charity called the Revenge Porn Helpline in the UK, and they work tirelessly to try and help victims get images down, because that's all you care about at the time. But there are platforms out there that are hosting this exploitative behavior and these exploitative practices. And in terms of regulation or kind of control over exactly what people have the ability to do, is it's in a really grey area. And yes, we're making steps forward with legislation, but it's about being ahead of the game. Deepfakes are now included in UK law, but what's next? What is the next technological advance that we need to be ahead of? And there's lots of tech platforms and firms that probably know what's coming. Like, they'll have a strategic plan, they'll have a development plan, and we need to think about the potentially abusive practices that this is facilitating and how to protect victims of exploitative abuse, such as intimate image abuse. So I really appreciate being able to speak here today. And I hope that from the conference, people see a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ways in which this abuse can manifest and affect different aspects of people's lives. And my kind of concluding message is, yes, it's online abuse, and we are talking about online safety and online harms, but on the website that I was featured on, there was lots of information about where people lived, their ages, their familial relationships, their places where they worked. It's very local knowledge. It's very invasive knowledge. And when your face is the thing that, and your identity and your image is the thing that has been exploited without your consent, and all of this other information is known about you, the world feels like a very unsafe place. So anonymity online is good for some things, but for crimes that have been committed like this, it's not ideal. So I would urge everyone to consider the impact on victims and survivors, and also just to reflect on the question, what's coming next in terms of technology, and what does that mean people will be able to do? And I hope that everyone enjoys the rest of the conference and has some interesting discussions around this afterwards. Thank you.